Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk more about Python basics and introduce strings. So what is a string exactly? A string is just a sequence of characters that can be placed into a variable or printed out to the screen. So it could be anything from 0 characters all the way up to as many characters as your memory can hold. In many other languages, you may have heard of a data type called a character. Python doesn't have a character class. However, to replicate a character, you can just create a string with only one character in it. So a regular string might be string 1 equals 1, 2, 3, hello. And then a character might be equal to just the letter T. So this brings up the conversation between single quotes and double quotes. The convention in most programming languages is that you put single quotes around a character or a character literal, and you put double quotes around something like a string. However, in Python, there's actually no operational difference or no functional difference between single and double quotes. However, they are very useful when you are creating a string that has other quotes in it. So let's say we have a single quoted string, and we will put hello quoted, there you go, hello quoted string. So in here, the single quotes on the outside indicate that this is a string, and because they're inside the single quotes, the double quotes are not interpreted as starting a string. So we could do something similar and do a double quoted string, and we'll just go ahead and put double quotes at the beginning and the end. As you see, because I have double quotes in the middle, this section right here is being taken out of the string and is not being interpreted as part of the string. So if we place those double quotes with single quotes, now this is a whole string. We can go ahead and print both of those out. So we'll go ahead and print out the single quoted string, and we'll print out the double quoted string. We'll bring up our terminal real quick, and we'll go ahead and print both of those out. And as you can see, it prints out a hello quoted string with double quotes around it, and then hello quoted string with single quotes about it. However, quoting just like this only works if you're going to do a single line of text. If you were to go ahead and hit the return statement here, as you see, it tries to fix it for me. I'm not going to allow it. You see all these errors come up. If I go ahead and save that and try and run this in Python, you'll see that it doesn't know what to do because there's multiple lines. If we go ahead and place three quotes in front of this and three quotes after this, this now becomes a multi-line string. And so now when I go ahead and try and print this out, you can see that it printed out both lines of the string. I'm going to drop into Python real quick and show you how that's working. So if you go into Python and we have A equals, we'll call this, we'll do a triple double quoted string. And this will be line 1, and this will be line 2, and this will be line 3. Now if I go ahead and print A out to the screen, you can see that it's placing a new line in front of it. So if you want to do multiple lines, you can just write a string that would be B equals hello, new line, how, new line, R, new line, U. And if we were to go ahead and print that out, you can see that it does print them on each line, but it's very difficult to read and very difficult when you're going back through your code to really understand what's going on. And that works with both single and double quotes. So you can see that I can make this 3 lines, and it works just fine. Another place that triple quotes are used is if you want to put a comment in Python. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this. So let's say I had a really cool comment. So I have this really cool comment, but Python's trying to interpret that as text. I can go ahead and put the hashtag or number sign in front of it, and now it becomes a comment, and it's just text there for you to read. But what if you have multiple comments? What if you have, a comment on this line, in this line, and you want to keep them all together. Well, it becomes very tedious if you have a big, long bunch of text like I have at the top here to put the number signs in front of each one of them. What you can do is just go ahead and put all of this into triple quotes. As you see, this now becomes a multi-line string, and it counts as a comment and allows you to take large amounts of text and make them into comments. And this is the approved way of doing a multi-line comment in Python, and it can be done with either the single quotes or the triple quotes, or the double quotes, sorry. It works just the same. We'll go ahead and erase all of this. As you've seen, I've used the print command several times, and so the print command is really, really cool in the fact that it provides a lot of options. It's useful for providing text out to your end user, as well as providing the debug information, or if there's an error, printing an error message out. So the easiest way to use the print command is just to type out a string, and then we can go ahead and move over to our terminal and run that. And you can see it prints out hello. Another thing you can do is if you have a bunch of strings you want to concatenate together, you can put those sequentially. And you can use a single quote to do this. So now we'll switch back to the terminal and show you the exact same thing. And you can see that it puts them together with spaces. So what if you decide you didn't want a space? You could go ahead and provide a named argument called SEP for separator and put whatever you'd like to be the separator. So with that as a separator, we'll run back over to the terminal, and you can see that it puts the dash in between each one of them instead of a space. If I copy this line and do it twice, you'll see that heading back to the terminal, you get hello, how are you on two separate lines with a return at the end of it. What if you decide you didn't want the return at the end? You could go ahead and change this to end with nothing, and that will remove the new line character that pops up at the end. So heading back over to the terminal, and you can see it squishes both of the lines together. This is good for, let's say you have the word hello, and then with this last one, we're going to do world. Heading back to the terminal, we print that out, and you see hello world all is on one line, even though you printed it in two separate places. This is good if you are printing something before, like an if statement or something going on in your code, and depending on what happens, you want to print out a second portion of it. I often use it to print out a current status and then a colored option of good or bad in red or green. So I have a color reference to look at as I'm going through and looking at the status of an application as it's running. Finally, you can place something into a variable. So we will have our string variable, and we will call this hello, which is my favorite word to use today. And you can go ahead and print just the same as you would a regular string, a string that's in a variable. So we'll head back over to the terminal, and you can see it prints out just the string that was in the variable. But what if you want to actually put a variable inside this string? I can't just create the variable a and then go ahead and put that in here. If I do that, it's just going to print out hello a. The print command provides a way of doing this. You can print out string variable, and then just as we saw before, you can use the multiple argument option to go ahead and have it place a space in here automatically. So going back to the terminal, you can see it does hello space goodbye. But let's say I wanted to put a string after that. So now I have after string, and this starts to get very, very complicated. Going back to the terminal, you can see that that prints out as expected. However, you start having these big long lines and it becomes extremely complicated. What if I instead wanted to just put goodbye into this string variable, meaning I could get rid of this whole section right here? You can do that with what's called F strings. So you place an F in front of this, which allows you to format it, and you can put curly braces and your variable in the center. So now when it goes to assign this value to this string var variable, it will interpret whatever is an A and replace this section right here with what's an A, which happens to be goodbye. and then you can use the variable as such. So we'll go back to the terminal, and you can see that the string prints out just the same, hello, goodbye, after string, but this is part of that string. The reason this is super useful is as you're going down, you can have this one variable and you can slowly work your way down through your code and add different things to it. And this allows you to build strings and pass these strings around. Let's say you build a error string or a status string, and you want to pass that to a logging utility or to something else in Python or print it out to a file. And instead of having to do these big complicated print commands, you could just create something that looks like this. And now all you have to do is print out string var after you've built your string, and you will get the exact same thing. Pop up the terminal real quick and see, we get the exact same string, hello, goodbye, after string, but we've created this compound formatted string inside the variable string var, and I just have to print out that one little thing. So I don't have to worry about the other pieces involved as I'm going through. As you see down here, I'm using these backslashes, \n for a new line. So this backslash is an escape character, and it escapes the very next character to determine how it's interpreted by Python. So you have several different things that you can interpret like that are called control characters. And these control characters are the tab, you have the new line, and the carriage return. So what a tab does is what you guys would expect. You hit the tab key and you get however many spaces or a tab character placed onto the console. The new line actually moves to a new line, and the carriage return moves the carriage back to the beginning. This is not something that we've seen for many, many years. It goes back to the typewriter days where you could type to a certain spot. So you could, type, and then when you hit, if you just went down to the next line, you would be typing right here. The carriage return, on the other hand, brings this all the way back to the beginning. So now when you hit new line and return, you end up coming back to the beginning to start typing at the beginning of the line. Go ahead and erase that real quick. Well, that seems like a kind of difficult thing to understand. We're going to go back to the terminal, and I'm going to do some stuff in Python to show you how that works. So let's jump into a Python shell. So let's say we are going to print out hello. Forgot to close my parentheses. Typed out hello. I could do hello and then do a new line, which defaults to taking you back to the beginning. In the majority of terminals, when you do a new line, it will take you down one line and back over. And as you can see, there's an extra space created right here. But what if I was to do /r, which is a carriage return, which would take me back to the beginning of this line, and let's say I type the character J. Jello came out. So what happened is we typed hello, then we went to the back of the beginning of the line and typed the J character, and the print automatically inserts a new line at the end of everything once it's done. And if I wanted to insert, let's say, a second new line, I could just hit /n and get that. So we could go JELLO1. So as you can see, I printed hello, then I went to a new line, then I printed Jello1, and then I created a new line, and then print added a new line as well. A lot of times you will see /r/n, which means go to a new line and carriage return. Sometimes you will have to use that, sometimes you won't. I typically use just a /n, and that is the default for Linux, whereas /r/n is the default line ending for Windows. Alrighty, we're going to go back to the editor and talk about emojis and Unicode. So on top of these tabs, new lines, and carriage returns, you also have the ability to do what's called Unicode. So if you bring up char map, you have all of these characters, and if you were to select one of them, let's go down here and find a cool character like the omega. You can see down here that it's Unicode plus 03A9, which is some hex number 900 and something, right? And that's the Greek capital letter omega. So if you wanted to print this out, you could select it and copy it, and we could create an omega character here, and you could just paste the character in there. But what if you wanted to use the Unicode for some reason? Like let's say you wanted to print out a bunch of Unicode. So we'll make this omega 1 because we're going to have 2 of them. And then we'll do omega 2. And we'll go look at that Unicode value again, and it's 03A9. 03A9. So if I was to print it out just like that, you would just get the character 03A9. So we'll do a print omega 1, and then we will do an omega 2 as well. We'll run over to the terminal real quick, and we will print that out. Oh, I don't have string var anymore. Let's get rid of that real quick. Alrighty. Let's try one more time. And there you go. You get the omega character, and then, but you just get the numbers for this one. You have to do a /u. So a lowercase u is for when you only have 4 characters. So anything you're going to find in char map, even if we go all the way down to the bottom, the very last character is still only 4 hexadecimal characters. So the small u is for 4 hexadecimal characters, and you'll see the difference in the typing. So if I go a large U and I hit a bunch of zeros, right now you see it changed colors. It went from a kind of orange to now it's this lighter yellow or lighter orange. I've now met the 8 character requirement for a larger U, which I think actually would print out the omega. We're going to try it real quick. So we'll do an omega 3 as well. Let's head over to the terminal, and let's see what happens. We get omega in all 3 of them, because we did put the /u, which is the escape for either small Unicode or large Unicode, which brings us to even cooler Unicode things like emojis. So we're going to pick the rocket emoji, and then we'll do the rocket 2, which is going to be a long emoji. So we'll do the rocket, we'll do the snake, because we're doing Python. So in some of the newer editors, like I'm using VS Code, you can actually copy in the emoji and just paste it, and it will recognize the emoji. In older editors, you won't be able to do that, and if your console doesn't support it, then you won't get the emoji characters either. However, the majority of consoles I've used recently do support the emoji characters. And since I don't know these Unicodes offhand, I'm going to copy them from off screen. And so here we have the actual emoji for a rocket, the actual emoji for a snake, and then the Unicode for a rocket and for a snake. And those can be found online if you go to any emoji any emoji website that provides you with the Unicode. All right, let's go ahead and add some print statements here. So we have rocket 1 and rocket 2, and then we're going to have snake 1 and snake 2. So let's head over to the terminal and we'll take a look and see how these look. And as you can see, both by putting the emoji in and using the Unicode, you can print out the emojis as well as these other Unicode characters. What if you don't want to print out the actual Unicode for it? Let's say I wanted to see what the actual Unicode was for this, and I didn't want it to print out to the screen with the emoji or Unicode character. As you saw previously, we had F for formatted strings. Well, there's also an R that you can use for raw strings. So I put an R in front of all of these. It will print out the raw string, and I'm going to go ahead and put an R in front of the actual emoji, and we'll see what happens. And we will run this. The R I put in front of the top 2 Unicodes actually printed out the Unicode, and it didn't change anything when I printed out the emoji, because the emoji character is actually what was in there. The reason this is important is for things like if you have a variable, let's say the file path. So it's C, users, Python, desktop. So if I was to go ahead and try and print this out, you end up getting this error because it can't escape these characters. In order to make this work appropriately, you would have to escape each one of these. So if you are using the / as part of your string, you have to escape the whole thing. So just to demonstrate these raw strings, we're going to have file path 2, file path 1. So this is a valid string. Now if I was to put R in front of this, I can get rid of all these slashes. Say I copied this string from my file explorer and paste it in here. By using this R, I don't have to do all the extra escaping that you would need to do in order to make it a valid string. And as you can see, both of these printed out correctly. And the raw string, I didn't have to put all the slashes in front of to make it work. But the first string, file path 1, where I did put the slashes, it escaped the escape character and provided you with the single slash as would be expected. So depending on which way you want to do your file paths, both of them are valid. But when you provide file paths as strings to some of the commands and functions we will be working with later, you will have to either use the R or the escape sequence to ensure that they work. Heading back over to VS Code, we're going to do one final thing. I'm going to erase all of these emojis and new lines and stuff at the top here. What if I didn't know what the file name was? Let's say the end user was providing me with what the file name is. What I can do is I can go ahead and combine F and R, and we will call this file name equals subscribe.csv. Now, as we saw previously, if we use the F for a formatted string, this is a formatted raw string, and this is just a regular formatted string. You can go ahead and put your variable inside the curly braces, and when we go to the terminal to print it out, you can see that it takes that variable and inserts it in. So you can combine both the F and the R to make a formatted raw string, so you don't have to do all the extra escaping, and you can use variables. So that sums up the basics and introduction to strings. There'll be an upcoming video on advanced string manipulation and how to do a lot of very cool things with strings. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you all in the next video.